Good day, everyone. Dimitri Lascaris coming to you from Montreal, Canada on August 20th, 2026. If you'll just bear with me here, I'm going to make sure we're live on X. Yes, we are. And it also appears that we are live on YouTube. Now, I will be joined little later on by my colleague Rami Yahia. I'm going to begin today before Rami joins. Rami, as you'll hear from him, is in a part of the world that very few people ever visit, and it's Transnistria, which is a sliver of land between Ukraine and Moldova. The Moldovan government would say that it is part of Moldova, but it has been a breakaway republic for decades. An overwhelmingly ethnic Russian population, as I understand, and it has been a potential flashpoint throughout the Ukraine war. This is not the first time that Rami has been in Transnistria. He's had prior experience of it, but he's going to be sharing with us today his insights from what is happening on the ground there. It's really quite a fascinating place, but I have not yet myself had the privilege of being there. And I also want to give a shout out before we begin to the organizers of our event, our speaking event on Tuesday evening in Toronto. Socialist Action was the organization principally responsible for organizing it. And I, as I've mentioned on this program and on other social media platforms, Zionists tried to shut us down. They did, in fact, succeed in getting the first venue, a place called Free Time Cafe on College Street, to cancel within hours of their learning that that was where we planned to give the speech. My speech wasn't even really about Israel. It was about the decline of the U.S. empire. But nonetheless, they didn't want me to, I guess, have personal contact with, followers of our program, whatever. Anyways, Socialist Action quickly found an alternative venue just about a block away, which was essentially the same capacity, and we had a full turnout. And I really want to say to the people who were there, the audience members, I was very, very moved by your support all the way, in the many ways in which you support our program and the work that we do. And the experience reminded me why it is, in fact, important to have in-person conversations with members of our audience. It's an entirely different and better experience than having to communicate with them strictly by electronic means. But the advantage of this is that electronic communication is that we can talk to people all over the world simultaneously. And, I can see just by looking at the chat that we're already being joined by many people around the world. And I say thank you to you all, wherever you may be, for tuning in and for supporting our program. So with that, I'd like to begin today's discussion about Donald Trump's latest threat of economic Armageddon, directed principally at Iran, although as we're going to discuss, the target of his threat, Iran, is not the only one that is going to be adversely affected if, in fact, this threat is carried out by Donald Trump's belligerents. And so here is the Truth Social post that he put out yesterday. I'll read it, as painful as it is for those who might not be able to make out the text here. No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. He loves referring to it as the Islamic Republic of Iran because I think, it's fair to say a lot of people in his base some people in his base are hostile to Islam. So I guess this gets them all motivated. And he goes on and says, tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. Their navy is gone. Their air force is destroyed. Their military factories are now rubble. Their currency is worthless and their country is hanging by a thread. Today, I'm also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous economic consequences. Oil smuggling, swap lines, cash transfers, exchanges, exchange houses, ship registries, front companies. It all needs to stop now. You know who you are. This will be an economic D-Day, and we need all of our allies to stand with the United States of America to isolate and defeat the Iran threat. Those maniacs are on the ropes, and these historic measures will cripple them and their ability to project terror worldwide. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Thank you for your attention to this matter. There's so much you can say about this lunacy, but I think probably the first thing that I want to emphasize is that I have been in Iran 3 times, as many of our audience members will know, in the last 15 months, including most recently in July, by which point in time the people of Iran had been subjected to decades of sanctions, including sanctions that Donald Trump himself repeatedly characterized as maximum pressure. Well, maximum means they can't be any greater than that. So I thought we were already into the ultimate sanctions program. That's what Donald Trump has been saying, or at least implying, for quite a long time. But apparently he's come up with something even more dastardly and destructive than his maximum pressure sanctions. Now, it's interesting, to my mind, that he chose yesterday to issue this threat. Bessent, his Treasury Secretary, has been talking about this for, I think, a couple of weeks now, that they were going to take this to a whole new level, their economic warfare. But he chose yesterday to put out this grand announcement. And yesterday happened to be the 73rd anniversary of the US-UK overthrow of Iran's democratically elected prime minister in the 1950s, Mohammad Mossadegh. That was on August 19th, 73 years ago. And that, of course, led to the installation of the vicious dictator, the Shah of Iran, who for decades tormented and oppressed the Iranian people, which led ultimately to the Islamic Revolution and the situation we find ourselves in today. This is one of the most egregious cases of blowback in U.S. foreign policy history, which is really saying something. Now, why did Donald Trump utter this new and escalated threat of economic warfare yesterday? Well, it could be that the man just has nothing to do whatsoever with the 73rd anniversary of this criminal coup. I wouldn't be surprised if Donald Trump doesn't even know about the coup. The man is such an ignoramus about history, and particularly the history of the non-Western world. This could be completely random. On the other hand, he may have chosen this day to issue this threat to try to rub salt in the wounds. Whatever his intentions may have been, this simply, I think, was a reminder to the Iranian people and anti-imperialists around the world about how we all got here. The fact that he chose yesterday to issue this latest threat. Now, the much more important question, of course, is what this all means for his criminal war of aggression on Iran. Judging from the response of the Iranian foreign minister, probably not much. This is what Abbas Araghchi said yesterday. The so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis, unprecedented debt and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Now, I think I didn't finish a thought a moment ago when I was pointing out that I've been to Iran 3 times in the last 14, 15 months. I've seen no evidence that the country is on the verge of economic collapse in my trips there. I saw what appeared to me, and this was also during periods of bombing. I was there for a total of, I think, 2 to 3 weeks when the country was actually being bombed. And I visited 8 cities in total, including the largest cities in Iran. And despite the economic warfare, the bombing of the country, life seemed to me to be entirely normal. In fact, I've been to countries that seem to me to be far more economically stressed than Iran. I've been to parts of Western countries that seem to me to be far more economically stressed than Iran. For example, places like Camden, New Jersey, or Bastrop, Louisiana, or Tunica, Mississippi, or East St. Louis in that I've witnessed there for many years, and in Canada, some parts of Canada, some parts of Europe, far surpasses anything that I saw in Iran. In fact, as I've said before, I have yet to see a single homeless person, a single person living in the streets, and hardly anybody is begging for money in the streets of Iran, which seems to me to be virtually miraculous when you consider what this country has been through. So the situation may have changed materially since I was last in Iran in early July, but based on what I'm hearing from people on the ground and seeing incredible news sources, it has not teetered on the brink of collapse since my departure, since my last visit. And I think that the United States is a long way away from achieving its objectives. Now, as far as I can tell, the Trump regime has not issued any new regulations or presidential orders that are intended to give effect to this latest threat. And the press indicates the same. The corporate press in the United States has suggested that there is no detail that's been released yet. Apparently, all we have is more bloviation from Donald Trump and nothing that really has legal effect. So it's unclear exactly when or if he's going to actually try to implement this threat by legal measures. But for the time being, we can't really give you more information than what he said in his latest tirade on Truth Social. And maybe the reason that he hasn't taken any legal measures is because this is nothing but another blast of bombast, and it doesn't really have any meat on the bones. But we'll find out, I'm sure, in the days ahead. If Trump is serious, what does all of this mean for the global economy? Well, as he indicated in his latest Truth Social blast, he's going to target countries and companies from other countries that do business with Iran. And that means what is referred to in the economic lingo as secondary sanctions. Secondary sanction is a sanction applied to somebody who deals with an entity that is under sanction. And the primary countries that we're talking about here, the ones that are probably most important to Iran in terms of trade, are China, Russia, and India. And of course, there are states bordering Iran like Pakistan and Turkmenistan, possibly also Afghanistan. There is significant trade, I understand, between Turkey and Iran and other Gulf states, as a matter of fact. So it appears that what Trump is intending to do if he carries out this threat is he's going to punish those countries and businesses in those countries that continue trading in any manner with Iran. And if he does that, of course, this is going to only increase disruption to the global trade system and quite possibly invite retaliatory sanctions, particularly from China. China is not minded at this point in time, its leadership, to put up with this kind of nonsense. It's an impingement on the country's sovereignty. The country obviously has the ability to defend itself from both a military and an economic perspective. And so this could simply exacerbate the already existing trade tensions between the United States on the one hand and major non-Western economies, principally that of China. And at this point in time, as I'm going to be explaining, the last thing the world needs is greater tensions in the realm of trade between the United States and major non-Western economies. China, by the way, has shown a willingness to use what is what is referred to as blocking legislation. And so how this sometimes works is that if countries within China, or whatever country we may be talking about that's targeted by secondary sanctions, if those companies stop doing business with the ultimate target of the U.S. sanctions in response to the threat of secondary sanctions, then the domestic government, the Chinese government, will impose sanctions on those, or penalties on those companies. So now they're caught in a bind, because if they cut off trade with the ultimate target of the U.S. sanctions, they themselves could be subjected to penalties by their own government. It is a measure, one of the many ways in which China could deal with this infringement. latest attempt to infringe upon its sovereignty. It's under no obligation in international law to give effect to U.S. sanctions. No country is under an obligation to give effect to U.S. sanctions unless they have been approved by the United Nations Security Council. And that has not happened here. Trump hasn't put a new set of sanctions before the UN Security Council for its approval. And if it did, it would undoubtedly be vetoed by one of China or Russia or both. So again, a lot of questions swirling about where this is all going to lead. But I would suggest that ultimately it is not going to succeed in its objective, which is to destroy the economy of Iran. I don't doubt for 1 second that Iran has suffered immensely from U.S. sanctions and could suffer more as a result of, an aggressive regime of secondary sanctions. But the Iranian people have shown remarkable resilience and determination and adaptability. And there's really little reason to think that that's going to change for the foreseeable future. And of course, they understand that they are confronted by an existential threat. And so their willingness to sacrifice is at an extraordinary level. Whereas, people living in the West and our brothers and sisters in the United States really don't have any motivation to sacrifice in support of Trump's war on Iran, because Iran didn't attack the United States. Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon. And even the U.S. intelligence agencies have been saying for, over 20 years now that Iran is not trying to develop a nuclear weapon. So what motivation do Americans have to continue sacrificing economically for Trump's depraved war of aggression? Another thing I want to say about this threat, folks, is that whether it's serious or not, the tenor of it is, in my view, is genocidal. It's outright genocidal. His threats, as he put it, extend to, quote, any economic lifeline to Iran. That's the phrase that he used. He didn't have any qualifying language in that tirade. So just like Trump's illegal maritime blockade on Iran is not confined to oil, nor is it confined to military assistance, it extends to any and all products that might be delivered to the Iranian people by means of maritime transportation, including food, medicine, other construction materials for civilian facilities, anything that is necessary for the well-being of the Iranian people, can no longer reach the Iranian people by maritime transportation, at least with the one exception being the Caspian Sea. But it can't reach the Iranian people, we're being told by Trump, because this blockade, he says, is effective, through ports in the Persian Gulf, in the Strait of Hormuz, or south of the Strait of Hormuz. So it's just outright genocidal intention that Trump is declaring here. And therefore, it just adds to the mountain of evidence that this man should be rotting in a jail cell at The Hague, not wielding the enormous power of the United States presidency. And unfortunately, we don't have an effective enforcement mechanism for international law, and so we have to put up with this lunatic. Now, at the same time as Trump is issuing what are in effect genocidal threats against Iran, so too are members of the Israeli political leadership. Here is an excerpt from a campaign speech just given by that unrepentant war criminal, Naftali Bennett. He's speaking in Hebrew, but there are English subtitles to this video.
תמצית האסטרטגיה שלנו מול איראן היא מאוד פשוטה. עכשיו אני רוצה לרכז ב4 שניות את כל האסטרטגיה שלנו מול איראן. אנחנו צריכים לדאוג שהמשטר האיראני ייפול לפני שהוא משיג גרעין. לכן, ביד אחת נמנע מאיראן לפרוץ לגרעין, ואת זה יאמר ממשלות ישראל כן עשו הרבה שנים, עקבו. אבל כשאתה קונה זמן, אתה צריך ביד השנייה לנצל את הזמן, וזה לא קרה. ביד השנייה, אנחנו נפעל להאיץ את הקרסת משטר האייתולות בכל הכלים שעומדים לרשותנו. לא רק פצצות, בעיקר לא פצצות. כלים מדיניים, כלכליים, טכנולוגיים, תודעתיים, חיזוק האופוזיציה הפנימית.
Okay, so this child murderer is saying that they're going to use all the tools at their disposal, not just bombs. They're going to use technological tools, political tools, economic tools. What have they been doing for the last, 40 years? They were using cyber warfare against Iran. They've been trying to crush, along with the United States, their principal backer, the economy of Iran. They have been trying to foment unrest in the country. The Mossad even said they were involved in those riots in January. Yes, there were many peaceful protesters that came out in the streets during those 4 days, but there were also riots. There's voluminous evidence of this. And the Mossad made no bones about the fact that it was helping the rioters. So what new measure of cruelty is this war criminal going to employ that hasn't already been employed by Netanyahu? By the way, Naftali Bennett is, I refer to him as a war criminal. It's not just because of his rhetoric. Naftali Bennett served as an officer in the genocidal Israeli military for many years. He committed atrocities, well-documented atrocities in South Lebanon, as I've covered on this program, including in Kana, where well over 100 civilians who were sheltering at a UN facility were massacred by forces under Naftali Bennett's command. Subsequently, when he entered Israeli politics, he boasted about how many Arabs he has killed in his life. So, this is just par for the course in Israel's political system. Whoever replaces Netanyahu is not likely to be any less sadistic and monstrous than Netanyahu himself. By the way, in that regard, Naftali Bennett is not likely to emerge as the winner of the next election in the genocidal Israeli entity. According to the latest poll by Kan News, the dubious distinction of likely successor to Netanyahu belongs for the time being to Gadi Eisenkot. Kan News poll released yesterday showed that Eisenkot's Yashar party has taken a one-seat lead over Netanyahu's Likud. And if the election were held today, according to the poll, Eisenkot's party would win 24 seats and Likud would have 23rd, whereas Naftali Bennett's Bayashad party would be in third place, a distant third with 14 seats. As I say, what does it matter at the end of the day? All the candidates who have a realistic shot of replacing Netanyahu are child murdering psychopaths. Now, returning to Trump's threats, they are doing nothing whatsoever to calm the oil markets. The price of Brent crude, a barrel of Brent crude today rose to above $94. And here you have a chart published today by the New York Times showing the increase in the price of Brent crude over the past several days. It goes back to August 16th. But if you go back to August 5th, which I checked this morning, the price of Brent crude was actually just below $80. I think it was about $79.85. So that was on August 5th. So in approximately 2 weeks, it's gone from just south of $80 to over $94 a barrel. That's an increase of approximately 18%. And this increase happened even though the United States and Iran are not firing at each other. That's a bad sign that the market is reacting this negatively, even during a period of relative calm between the United States and Iranian militaries. Now, the conflict between Ansar Allah and Saudi Arabia is in a hot phase and is undoubtedly contributing to this increase in the price of oil. Ansar Allah's spokesperson put out a statement, I believe this was yesterday, published by Tasnim News, about summarizing its recent military operations. From July 20th to August 19th, Yemeni forces have effectively implemented the Saudi naval blockade by directly targeting 8 oil tankers, 5 in the Red Sea and 3 in the Gulf of Aden and the Arabian Sea, and forcing another 48 oil tankers to divert and return. In response to aggressive attacks on Hodeidah Port and Sana'a Airport, 9 heavy drone and missile operations using dozens of projectiles have been carried out against oil facilities in Yanbu. I believe that's the Red Sea port of Saudi Arabia. Very important because it allows Saudi Arabia to export potentially millions of barrels of oil a day without going through the Strait of Hormuz. Also, according to the Yemeni spokesperson, the facilities at Najran, the major refinery at Jizan, and another facility at Abba, as well as oil infrastructure in the eastern region of Saudi Arabia, were all targeted during this period. Not only this, but Ansar Allah is announcing that it has expanded or is in the process of expanding its military operations to a second phase. And here is the statement in that regard. Houthis add all Saudi Aramco facilities to its target list, all of them. Yemen's Ansar Allah movement has added all Saudi Aramco facilities to the list of potential targets. The Lebanese media outlet Al Akhbar reported the list includes oil storage depots, pipelines, export terminals, and other oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia. In recent weeks, the movement has repeatedly carried out strikes on Aramco facilities in Jizan, Yanbu, and Najran. Prior to that, the Houthis imposed a blockade on Saudi shipping and so forth. Now, no one should doubt at all Ansar Allah's ability to strike Saudi targets, Aramco targets anywhere in Saudi Arabia. The Israelis themselves confirmed during the time that Ansar Allah was attacking Israel that a number of Ansar Allah drones and missiles actually penetrated Israeli air defenses and struck Israeli soil. So if they can hit Israel, they can unquestionably hit anywhere in Saudi Arabia. Now, the turmoil that we're seeing in the economy is not confined to oil markets. It's also in the bond and currency markets. Just this week, by the way, the U.S. hit the ignominious threshold of $40 trillion in national debt for the first time in history. This is a report in the New York Times. I believe this was yesterday. And it refers to America's borrowing binge continuing. That is precisely what it is. The president's promises to restore fiscal order and reduce the amount of America's debt burden, says the New York Times, have been hampered by spending on the Iran war, tax cuts, and tariff refunds. Now, this week, the yield on the U.S. 30-year Treasury bond hit 5.327%, its highest level since 2007, when the great financial crisis began. That is a very ominous sign indeed. Now, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent intervened in the bond markets by purchasing 30-year bonds raised with money the U.S. borrowed with shorter-term bonds. Kind of sounds like a Ponzi scheme. This is a report in The Guardian yesterday about that intervention. The U.S. Treasury, it reported, doubled debt buyback. So the U.S. Treasury is buying its own debt, increasing demand for that debt, and thereby suppressing interest rates. The Guardian reported that this was an effort to balance out the bond market as officials at the U.S. Federal Reserve remain divided over how to deal with high inflation, which results in substantial part from the criminal war of Iran on Iran, of course. And it stated further, the yield rate on 10-year, 20-year, and 30-year Treasury notes all hit 20-year highs this week, with the 30-year Treasury yield rising to its highest rate since 2007. The rapid rise was concerning news for borrowers as major loans, including mortgages, are backed by treasuries. So if the bond yields go up, Americans across the board are going to suffer. Already, they're having to deal with the increased costs of energy and all of the secondary effects that has on the goods and services that they require for living. So how effective was this intervention by the U.S. Treasury? Not much. Here is a report in the New York Times today. Oil prices jump and bond market stresses return. Oil prices rose to their highest levels in a month on Thursday after President Trump claimed he would level tremendous economic consequences on countries that did business with Iran. Anxiety from geopolitics, the state of the economy, and government finances could also be seen in the bond market, with Treasury yields jumping sharply. Without naming countries or details on possible actions, Trump said on social media on Wednesday that he could target countries that buy Iranian oil. And a U.S. Navy blockade has already cut off Iran's seaborne oil exports. And here's the important part. Bond market volatility returned in force on Thursday, that's today, with a rise in U.S. government yields erasing nearly all of the decline the previous day when the Treasury Department announced an effort to rein in rising borrowing costs. It seems that the Treasury's efforts are not yielding much, if any, fruit. The US and Japan are also struggling to stop a potentially catastrophic decline in the Japanese yen. And there too, their efforts are having a questionable impact. This is an article published by the New York Times on August 14th, Why Japan is Struggling to Stop the Yen's Decline. The Japanese yen has resumed its slide over the past week, surrendering ground it gained after the US and Japan spent tens of billions of dollars to prop up the currency, languishing near 4-decade lows. The yen briefly strengthened to 155 per dollar intraday after the intervention in late July, but the rally quickly faded. And on Friday, so this would have been Friday of last week, the currency was trading at around 159 to the dollar. Its renewed slide is approaching the 160 yen level that could test the resolve of officials in Tokyo and Washington, who said they would not hesitate to intervene again if disorderly yen movements persisted. The reversals underscores the limits of one-off currency interventions, while investors remain uneasy about Japan's enormous debt burden. By the way, the last time I checked, its debt to GDP ratio was in the range of about 250%, which is by far the highest in the world. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's push for aggressive government spending and a perception that the Bank of Japan is raising interest rates too slowly are contributing to the problem. Now, I've heard reports in recent days that the Japanese central bank did something that desperately didn't want it to do. It started selling U.S. treasuries and using the proceeds therefrom to purchase yen and erode or stop or at least diminish the decrease in the Japanese yen by selling, large amounts of treasuries. They're decreasing demand for treasuries, which forces the United States to offer a higher interest rate to attract buyers of U.S. long-term debt. So this is a real mess that the United States finds itself in. I doubt that the rather dim-witted Besant is up to the task, if anybody is, of navigating a way out of this mess. And on top of all of these stresses in the financial markets, in the commodities markets, you have an absolutely gigantic bubble fueled by the mania over artificial intelligence in the US and other Western stock markets. And that bubble could explode at any point in time. And I have to tell you, my friends, that all of this is looking eerily similar, albeit for somewhat different reasons, to the lead up to the financial crisis. I myself had what I would describe as a front row view on the great financial crisis of 2007 to 2009, because at that point in time, my full-time gig was the prosecution of securities class actions against public companies trading on North American stock exchanges, not just the Toronto Stock Exchange, but also the NYSE and the NASDAQ. And one of the very first companies I sued in a major class action when I returned from New York City to Canada in the early 2000s was a company by the name of FMF. FMF was a Michigan-based subprime mortgage lender. In fact, it didn't offer loans to anybody in Canada. It was strictly an American business, but it was of such a dodgy character that it couldn't get listed on the United States. It wanted to go public and raise money. The owners of the company wanted basically to sell their shares also and enrich themselves, which they managed to do. And so they went public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, which is less rigorous, shall we say, even by the lowly standards of the United States, in terms of allowing companies to go public. And so this company, FMF, goes public. I think it was in 2005. As I recall, it raised somewhere in the range of $100 million. And it blew up, went bankrupt in less than 7 months. So my firm had a client who sadly had invested a significant amount of money, 6 figures, in that company. He came to us, complained vigorously about it. At that point in time, I knew nothing about the subprime mortgage lending market, but I had to learn really fast, try to get a handle on why this company went bust. And we hired investigators, and they started interviewing former employees, a whole bunch of people who lost their jobs, who were only too willing to speak about the business. And they started telling us about things that nobody in the financial media was talking about at the time, things like ninja loans, no income, no job loans, people being given mortgage loans with high interest rates, even without making any significant financial disclosure at all to the mortgage lender. And then there were just outright, many cases of outright fraud in the mortgage lending business. And so this was just a ticking time bomb. The company blows up. We launched this class action, and we managed to gain a settlement from the company and its insurers. Well, the company didn't have any money. It was bust, but the insurers, and we got some money also out of the executives. And we settled that case in early 2006. And I'll never forget to this very day that on the day that I had to go into court and ask the judge to approve the settlement, because all class action settlements are subject to court approval, as I was standing in my hotel room, ironing my shirt, getting ready to go into courtroom, I'm watching Bloomberg, and they announced that New Century Financial, which was the largest subprime mortgage lender in the United States, had just gone bankrupt. And from there on in, everything just went to shit. It was a complete bloodbath in the stock markets, in the banking industry. And I look all around me today, and as I say, it's eerily similar. There are red flashing signs all over the place. And I think these people, the current crop of leaders in the United States, are even less capable than the Obama administration was of handling the great financial crisis. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I think we should all be getting ready, preparing ourselves for the worst possible outcomes for all the reasons I've stated. Now, before I bring our comrade Rami into the conversation, who's in the studio waiting patiently, I just want to say one other thing unrelated to the financial markets, and that is that after this child murderer Ben-Gvir said several days ago that he wanted the Israeli military to kill between 30 and 40. I just can't believe that somebody's saying this without being immediately arrested by Western governments. He wanted between 30 and 40 Palestinians killed every day in Gaza. It appears that, in fact, the Israeli military is escalating its killing spree in Gaza. Here is a report. Even the Times of Israel had to acknowledge that at least 10 were likely killed in what it called an attack targeting Hamas commanders. In fact, these were police officials, including a female police official, as I understand it, who were murdered by these psychopaths. And I want to remind you that only about a week ago, the foreign minister of Turkey, Mr. Fidan, said that if Israel did not withdraw from Gaza, that Turkey will take radical action. This is around the same time that Turkey entered into this Mecca Defense Pact with Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. And some people were saying that the purpose of that pact was to counter Israeli aggression. Well, not only is Israel not withdrawing from Gaza, not only did political leaders in Israel heap scorn on this threat, but they're escalating the killing. So where is the radical action from Turkey, Mr. Fidan? They didn't even have the decency, the people in the Erdogan government, to provide a naval escort to the incredibly courageous humanitarians who tried to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza on numerous occasions during the genocide. Not even a naval escort. So I have absolutely no confidence in Turkey to take any meaningful action, let alone radical action, even though it is crystal clear from the polling that the Turkish people themselves are horrified by what Israel is doing and are adamant that their government needs to step up its game and bring an end to the slaughter by any and all means possible. In any case, let's bring Rami into the conversation now. How you doing, brother?
Hello, everyone. Yeah, pleasure to see you, Dimitri. So basically, a week ago, I flew from Athens to Bucharest, and I ended up taking a train from Bucharest to Chisinau, Moldova. And the reason why I took this train is, well, for many, many reasons, but one of them is for this little pop culture side of mine that I'm a bit ashamed to admit. And I no longer, I mean, it was only a small phase of my life, but anyways, in 2022, there was a song in Eurovision by some Moldovan group called Zdub Sizdov, something along those lines. And it was about this train from Chisinau to Bucharest, right? And the song was very, very, very catchy. And I felt like I absolutely had to take this train ride, and I ended up doing it. And from Chisinau, I've been there 3 times, I believe. One of the times was during the Moldovan elections. At this time, I was following it very, very closely. There was competition between Maia Sandu, the pro-EU candidate, and I'm forgetting the names, but this candidate that was a lot more critical of the European Union and NATO. Anyways, there was lots of stuff going on, but I ended up taking a train, a marshrutka, which are these little Soviet buses that you could fill like 15 people in them, and I took it straight to Prednestrovia Moldovan Republic, PMR, or most commonly known in the West as Transnistria. And Transnistria is this tiny little enclave sandwiched between the Republic of Moldova, which has Chisinau as the capital, and Ukraine. Well, we've spoken enough about Ukraine over the last couple of years.
Could I just pause and when you finish talking about Transnistria, could you tell our audience about where you were when the special military operation began? I think that would be.
So basically, early February 2022, right?
Yes, it was 2022. Yeah. That's when it began.
Yeah, I was in Chisinau, and I decided to go to Transnistria, and I ended up going, let's just say, on the 15th of February 2022. I took a train from Chisinau to Tiraspol, Transnistria. Right at this point, people in the West were telling us there was going to be war in Ukraine. But truly, when you're in the region, it didn't really seem likely. I mean, people were having an amazing time and whatnot. And I fell asleep in the train, and I expected this to be a train, like an inter-Moldovan train that goes from Chisinau to Tiraspol and back and forth, right? Turns out that this train goes to Moscow. At that time, I used to go to Moscow. So I fall asleep and I wake up. I see Ukrainian soldiers storming the train, and they process me. I enter the country, and then I end up going back to Transnistria. So I was there on let's say the 15th of February 2022. Mm-hmm. And after like kind of seeing Ukraine, and I just like felt tempted to go. So after spending like a week or two in Transnistria back in February 2022, I ended up going to Ukraine on the 20th of February 2022. And
you were in Odessa, as I recall.
I was in Odessa, which is honestly one of the greatest cities I've ever been to in my entire life. Okay. And we're talking here 20th of February 2022. People are supposed to be scared, whatnot, whatever. I mean, I was having like the nicest, I mean, it was fairly affordable, the nicest restaurants, beautiful Black Sea. And every day my brother would call me and be like, there's gonna be war. Like this is what we're hearing in Canada. And it was impossible for me to imagine it happened because I mean, everyone was having a blast every single day. And then on the 20th of February, I believe that was the day that the special military operation started. I wake up at like 3 a.m. and I hear like a small explosion sound, but it sounded like a car accident outside of my apartment, right? But in reality, I mean, when I ended up waking up and looking at the news, it was the sound of a ballistic missile hitting, I believe, the Odessa airport at 3 or 4 a.m. I went back to sleep because it didn't really sound scary, right? And then at 7 a.m., all my friends ended up calling me. I had like 30 missed calls. I had friends that I never spoken on the phone to who were calling me. And this is when I knew, okay, something's going on. My friends told me that the war started at 7 a.m. And I was like, sure, but in Donetsk and Luhansk, they're like, no, it's happening in Odessa. I ended up taking a taxi back to Prnestrovia, to Transnistria. And as soon as I get to the border, the taxi driver is like, you need to pay. I'm like, yeah, but I did. It's on the taxi app. He's like, no, you have to pay using cash because you selected the cash option. Because before putting in Moldova, I was in Lebanon where credit cards don't work, right? When you use taxi apps. So I had to like run across the border looking for an ATM machine at the border between Moldova and Ukraine, and that was quite of a shit show. And here I am now back in Prnestrovia, in Tiraspol, beautiful Tiraspol, here on the 20th of August, 2026. And
just so people can see that, for those who aren't familiar with this area, Transnistria is the red sliver of land you can see between Moldova and Ukraine, and Odessa is just down where the words Black Sea are. It's not marked on the map, but Odessa's down there. So sorry, Rami, go. I just wanted to orient people, but go ahead.
Keep this map there. The reason why this is, the borders of the country are pretty much Ukraine on the eastern side. On the western side, wherever you see kind of these the border, that's the Dniester River that goes from Ukraine down to, from Ukraine to Ukraine, right? So on whatever's at west of the Dniester River is the Republic of Moldova. Everything east is Transnistria up to the border with Ukraine. Now there are some small exclaves and belonging to the Republic of Moldova and Transnistria on either side of the Dniester River, but in a very simplified way, the borders of the Prnestrovia Moldovan Republic, which is the name of Transnistria, is everything east of the Dniester River.
Yeah, sorry, people at chat, I think I misspoke earlier. People are saying that Odessa is more on the east outside of the image. Thank you for that correction. I indicated it was in the image.
It's by Marshrutka, which is those little buses from Tiraspol to Odessa. If I remember correctly, from 4 years ago, it was not more than 45 minutes to an hour. It's 90 kilometers. So 80 kilometers. So yes, maybe an hour and a half, but it goes on very, very quickly, right?
So Rami, I understand that Transnistria is kind of it's kind of like an artifact of history in that it looks a lot like the Soviet Union. It hasn't changed that much from the time when the USSR existed, and I think you've got some interesting videos which will give us a flavor of that. But is that true? Does it feel like you've gone back in time to the Soviet Union when you're in Transnistria?
Well, first of all, Transnistria is one of the few ex-Soviet territories that haven't de-Sovietized, that haven't rejected their Soviet history. I believe you could find a couple of Lenin statues in Belarus, in Russia, of course. But I've been to Estonia. I've been to pretty much every single Soviet republic except for Russia and Turkmenistan and Lithuania. And I believe that other than Kyrgyzstan and maybe, there's a one or two statues I saw in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, but in the Republic of, the Prnestrovia Moldovan Republic in Transnistria, it's all over the country. Truly, I maybe took 50 pictures of Lenin statues across the place. They're the state flag of PMR, of the Prnestrovia Moldovan Republic, has the hammer and sickle. They actually inherited the flag of the Moldovan Socialist Soviet Republic. So this is not like a newly created identity or whatever. They, in many ways, see themselves as the as the surviving entity of the Moldovan Social Soviet Republic, and they actually fought a war against the Republic of Moldova, which ended up in a bit of a standstill, and there's still kind of some cold tensions between the two.
Right.
And I could maybe elaborate more about this, but basically, in 1989, there was this language reform, language law that was about to be passed that would have removed Russian as an official language, and that would have pushed, I'm not sure if they use the word Moldovan or Romanian as the official language, and that's a huge debate that we can maybe talk about another time, the difference between Moldovan and Romanian. But essentially, the Russians of the ex-Moldovan Socialist Soviet Republic feared reunification with Romania and feared the removal of Russian as a part as an integral part of Moldovan culture. So, which ended up sparking a war between 1990 and 1992, which in many ways came out as a bit of a victory for Transnistria, considering they were able to, first of all, defend their legacy of the Soviet socialist of the Soviet Union, or at least of like Soviet values, protected Russian language, and up until kind of recently, their economy was doing much better than the Republic of Moldova.
Now, you're obviously very close, probably within a few kilometers of Ukrainian territory. You've been there a few days now, right?
Yep.
And last
here
day,
5 days maybe.
So I saw reports last night that the Russian military launched another broad-ranging attack, missiles and drones on Ukraine. Have you heard anything, any activity of a military nature since you've arrived in Transnistria on the Ukrainian side of the border?
I haven't. I do occasionally catch Ukrainian cell phone towers. Like I got a text message today saying, "Welcome to Ukraine. You have 35 gigs of internet," whatever. The day that I arrived in Transnistria, there was the day that I arrived in Moldova, which should have been like 6 days ago or so. I believe that there was a Russian drone that might have crossed into Moldovan territory because Ukraine would have deactivated the guiding of the drone or the missile, which kind of intentionally got it to enter Moldovan airspace. That's, I believe, the reports that I have read. But to be quite honest with you, the situation here seems to be quite calm. I mean, I actually spoke to a friend today, right. a friend that I met 4 years ago, and I met him back today. He said people here understand that whatever's happening the status quo is most likely going to continue. There shouldn't be any more escalations. I remember when I first left Ukraine, the border between Transnistria and Ukraine was very, very tense because people were scared that, there was this fear that Transnistria could be dragged into this war because in many ways Ukraine doesn't feel. There's a bit of a Russian presence. There's a peacekeeping Russian force there that could have been targeted by Ukraine. Ukraine didn't end up doing it. Moldova, the Republic of Moldova, is clearly trying to take back, to take over the Pridnestrovyan Moldovan Republic, but essentially it doesn't seem like there should be any more escalations in Pridnestrovia. Right. Now, keep in mind, Dimitri, that the way that I look at Transnistria, my passion for Transnistria comes from the fact that, as Palestinians, sometimes we have this facade that the state of Palestine exists as a country, but truly, when you compare it to Pridnestrovyan Moldovan Republic, this is where you see that true autonomy doesn't come by demanding permission, but by exercising this authority against all odds. You look at in Palestine, right? We have Mahmoud Abbas basically bending down to the United States and Israel. Palestinians have a passport, but essentially we're using the Israeli shekel. Israel can freeze Palestinian bank accounts. Israel breaches Palestinian territory, although all of it is Palestinian territory. But for the sake of the argument, anything in area A, B, and C, Israel is able to take control of it as they wish. And then you look at here in Pridnestrovia, Moldovan Republic. First of all, I cross a border, I get stamped. There's a true process, right, of Transnistrian commanding authority over their border,
Sovereignty.
Their sovereignty,
Yeah.
asking if I have any goods to declare. I mean, and in many ways, no one can stop them from exercising that sovereignty. Moldova tried to invade Transnistria. They failed. They have strong deterrents. Basically, there's peacekeeping forces, and there's a high concentration of detonation of dynamite or something along those lines. The largest concentration of all of Europe. That creates kind of a catch-22 if Ukraine or Moldova ever tries to invade Transnistria. They have the Transnistrian ruble. They have their own bank accounts that are, fully operational. There's a central bank that is able to control currency exchange, the flow of money, minting their own currency, their own telephone communication networks, right? And this is all completely independent. And I look at this and I feel totally inspired that you do not ask permission to have sovereignty over your land. They have their own military with their own, what's it called again? Mandatory military service. And it's truly inspiring. And another thing that is interesting.
Should we get to the video? Sorry, because we're almost at the 1 hour mark. I just want to make sure people see what you're seeing.
1 second. We have to remove this little photo here. So first of all, there's this photo over here. This is on the main road. I think it's called 25 of October, which is named after the October Revolution of 1917, which led to the victory of the Soviets, of the Bolsheviks, and basically establishing the Soviet Union. Well, not the Soviet Union at that point. I believe it was the Russian Revolution.
It looks like there's a Russian Orthodox church there in the background. Is that what that is?
So that's a little shrine, more than a church. It's quite small, but it's because right next to it there's the eternal flame of the martyrs and the fallen soldiers of the Great Patriotic War, which is known in the West as World War II, although there's a difference in dates, but essentially it's the overlapping war. There's a memorial to the fallen soldiers of the war against Moldova, as well as the Afghan war. But this sign over here, it says, Moje rodnaje Pridnestrovje Slubovju k Republiki. And it says, my native Pridnestrovia with love to the Republic. And I think it's it caught my attention. I think it's a beautiful expression of pride and nationalism in a country that isn't recognized by any other country other than South Ossetia, Abkhazia, and formerly the Republic of Artsakh, which has sadly dissolved after the Azeri ethnic cleansing. And then Russia doesn't recognize Transnistria? I do not believe Russia recognizes Transnistria.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got some other interesting video here.
Yes. And then let's remove this little this photo over here. And then so this picture over here, this little frame. For Azerbaijan, it was so as you can see, those are the three flags of the so basically the one on the left is Abkhazia, right? I don't know if you can see too well. The flag of Abkhazia, in the middle, it's the flag of Prednestrovia, Moldovan Republic, which is the hammer and sickle, the red with the green stripe in the middle. And then on the right, it's the Republic of South Ossetia. Artsakh and South Ossetia are in Georgia, and they are separatist states. I believe Abkhazia and South Ossetia, these are actually recognized by Russia, but Transnistria isn't, if I recall correctly.
Right.
And then if we go back here, we have, this is, again, right? So they've never, compromised their entity. That's Vladimir Lenin in front of the government office of the main government building of Prednestrovia.
Right.
And then what do we have here? What else can we show? This is
this impressive structure here. What is that?
This is Dom Sovietov. I believe this is House of Council House. I believe that's what it translates into.
Is it like their parliament?
This is office space mostly. I believe there's there might be some government offices inside, but it's not necessarily a government building.
Is that a bust of Lenin in front of the building?
There's a bust of Lenin there.
Right. Interesting.
Like, you cannot escape Lenin in Prednestrovia. You cannot escape him. And then this is the main, like, one of the main intersections, October 25th Street, and I just filmed this little mural, and that's one thing that the Soviet Union used to do. It's kind of paint these like art murals to express the cultural identity of the area. I've seen similar, but obviously adapted to the local, or to the republic, across Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, up to Estonia, Moldova, Ukraine. And it's just beautiful to see how culture is kind of scaled, but also localized across the entirety of the former Soviet Union. So that's in a nutshell.
Thank you very much for that. Please keep us posted, especially if you manage to speak to people or see any activity relating to the ongoing, devastating war in Ukraine, which seems to be getting worse by the day in many ways. And be safe, of course. This is a tense part of the world, even though it looks peaceful in those images. So with that, I think we have some time for some questions. If anybody has any, I did notice somebody a moment ago suggesting in the chat that I should do an interview with Tucker Carlson. Although I have my political differences with Tucker Carlson, if that opportunity ever arose, I'd be happy to speak to his gigantic audience. But I've never met the man or spoken to him. He may not even know I exist. Now, any questions there, Rami, that we can answer before we sign off for today?
I'm taking a little look at the chat.
There's one question.
There's just one comment. Someone said Romania still has no wokeism. I would be careful, because there's heavy repression on members of European Parliament in Romania that are critical of Israel, NATO, and the European Union, and their their parliamentary immunity has been removed. I've been texting one of them, and I might be able to land an interview with this member of European Parliament, and truly the amount of censorship that I'm seeing there is awful. I also did a report on the elections of Georgescu, which turned out to be a fraud and an example of EU meddling.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I noticed some people expressing concern about the idea that I might one day be on Tucker Carlson's show. Well, the questions are kind of academic at this point, but it's interesting, because I have a policy of, unless the person is an outright Nazi, If somebody who has a large platform is willing to engage with me without placing any restrictions on what I can say, I generally will accept that invitation. So, for example, I've appeared frequently on Mario Nafal's show. He has a large platform on X, but I disagree with a lot of what Mario says, and I have not made any bones about telling him that on his program, live on air. So for me, it's not really the ideological perspective. Again, except in extreme cases, it's not the ideological perspective of the host that matters. It's the ability to reach the audience of the platform without any restriction on what I can say. So that's kind of my philosophy. But yeah, there's lots of reasons to be concerned about Tucker Carlson. I agree with that.
So we have a couple of questions. Yes, so we have here, what was the actual purpose of Rami's visits to this old Soviet region? First of all, I went there because I'm really passionate about Prenestrovia. It's a bit of a window into the past, the future, and the present. I don't want to sound too poetic saying this, but there's a lot of things changing in the world, and it's probably one of the only places left in Europe that isn't submitted to the European Union, that is putting up a fight in its own ways against all odds. And I don't know, there's something inspiring, truly. Like, if it wasn't, I mean, I don't really take seriously the Palestinian Authority, the state of Palestine, mainly because we're not. I mean, other than, of course, our government in Gaza, but when you look at, it's just so inspiring. I'm in awe just being here. So that's one of the reasons why I was here, and I was with a buddy that we decided to meet up and head to Prenestrovia. By
the way, sorry, some funny comments about my shirt, and someone saying, "Please don't use it with a cigar." Just so you know, I think that's a reference to Larry Johnson, who wears colorful shirts and smokes cigars oftentimes while he's being interviewed. This shirt is not inspired by Larry Johnson. This shirt is a gift to me and is sort of comfortable summer wear, so that's why I got it on today. Larry does indeed have a unique taste in attire, and I promise you I won't appear on air with a cigar. Or a fedora. So we have another, somebody asking by the way, I've been referring to it as Transnistria, but as I understand it, the people who live there call it something else. How do you pronounce it?
They call it Prednestrovia, Moldovan Republic. Right. I think for short, people mostly call it Prednestrovia. Someone in the comments said that Transnistria was the name the Nazis gave it, but the official name of the country is Prednestrovia Moldovan Republic. They're not ashamed of the word Moldova. They actually claim it. They just recognize that they are on one side of the Dniester.
Mm-hmm. I see now another couple of questions in there. Did you answer the question about the currency?
No, I haven't. They actually have. It's called the Transnistrian. The PMR ruble, right? The Prenestrovia Moldovan Republic ruble, and it's around, if I recall correctly, 16 rubles for $1, for $1 US, and I exchange it every day. I exchange maybe like $50, and with $50 I get a fancy hotel for $40, and I spend $10 on like food and coffee. So that's pretty much, it's fairly affordable. You could find something cheaper, but it's just convenient for me, the $40 here.
Right. So Carlo Biondi is asking, thank you for this question, Carlo, what I think of Max Blumenthal's argument that effectively Israel is calling the shots in U.S. foreign policy, especially, at least insofar as it concerns West Asia. And this is an important question, which I try to address as often as I can on this program, because I think there is it's very important to get this right. If we don't understand what is causing the U.S. to wage these wars of aggression, then it'll be much more difficult for us to put a stop to them. I don't believe that the U.S. foreign policy elite is waging wars of aggression in West Asia because it was told by Israel to do so. I think, frankly, that strains credulity. There is a huge imbalance of power between the United States and Israel. Israel is a pipsqueak that is extremely dependent economically compared to the United States. It's a pipsqueak militarily. It's a pipsqueak politically. It's a pipsqueak. Its population is a tiny fraction that of the United States, and it depends on every form of U.S. aid imaginable: political protection, military aid, economic assistance. You name it. They're even, trying to destroy the ICC to protect Israeli war criminals, or at least that's part of the reason why they're trying to destroy the ICC. So when you have this huge imbalance of power, one side is existentially dependent on another much more powerful state, it's extremely unlikely that the dependent party is going to be able to exercise control over the state on whose support it depends for its very survival. And in fact, there are plenty of reasons why the political and economic elite wage these wars that have nothing to do with Israel. For one thing, all these wars are making the U.S. military contractors fantastically profitable. They're earning huge profits from this, and they have enormous control over the U.S. political process. Secondly, there's the oil. The United States wants to dominate this region because of its relatively accessible, massive oil reserves, and it uses Israel to effectively snuff out any opposition to U.S. dominance of the region. And it's, the existence of Israel, I say constantly, Israel is a giant U.S. military base masquerading as a country. But because it does masquerade as a country, the United States is able to place a distance between itself and the crimes of Israel. And you see this all the time. So, for example, there was a report this week in the Israeli media that Jared Kushner, on his recent trip to Israel, clashed with Israel's prime minister over what was going on in Gaza, as if, the Trump regime was trying to restrain Israel. This is absolute bollocks. This is a way for the Americans to push the blame onto the Israelis for the genocide, when in fact the Americans are fully on board. I'm not talking here, obviously, about the American people. I'm talking about the regime in Washington. It's fully supportive of the genocide. They want to snuff out all resistance to U.S. hegemony, and they use Israel to do it. And then afterwards, they throw their hands up and they say, "Oh, we tried to restrain Israel, but we couldn't. It's a sovereign country." Blah blah blah. So, bottom line is, I am strongly in disagreement. And although I respect people like Max and I respect people like John Mearsheimer, who say that Israel is calling the shots, I'm in strong disagreement with that. And I think if you really want to understand why the United States is waging these wars of aggression, look to the United States. The answer lies in the United States, not in Israel.
Dimitri, where's the next false flag coming from?
Man, that is a hard question to answer. There's so many possibilities. My best guess is that but this may not come to pass, and this is sheer speculation on my part. There's going to be some terrorist attack, so-called terrorist attack that results in bloodshed, and that the U.S. and Israeli governments will try to attribute to Iran in order to try to build public support for a resumption of the hot war on Iran. And I think that it's not just Israel that's capable of carrying these out. Of course, the CIA itself might do this and has a history of doing it.
Well, there's also Israel's trying to escalate in Lebanon at the Ali Tahir area. Israel also, I don't know if we spoke about this in the live stream. I was out in the beginning, but the strikes on the airports in Syria, and the escalation with tensions with Turkey. So lots of places where the next false flag can come from. Mm-hmm. Now we have. I'm wondering if you think Egypt will join the Sunni NATO alliance later via U.S. pressure. I think, yeah.
Well, I saw some interesting commentary about that. Thank you for the question, Hassan. I'm assuming your first name is Hassan. Uh, I believe it was the Israeli press were reporting, suggesting that Egypt has not entered into that alliance because of its peace deal with Israel. That if it were to enter into that alliance, that might bring it into violation of its peace deal with Israel, or could force it at some point to take actions that would constitute a violation of its peace deal with Israel. I find that to be a plausible explanation for why it hasn't entered thus far. I think also Al-Sisi, the dictator of Egypt, hates the Muslim Brotherhood, and the Turkish government is seen to be a leading force in that movement, in the Muslim Brotherhood movement. So I think that perhaps Egypt's dictatorship doesn't want to ally itself too closely with Turkey, or that just could be a question of timing, and we're going to find out that they are in fact are going to enter this defense pact at some point in the near future. But at the end of the day, I still remain convinced that this isn't going to amount to a hill of beans. Whether or not Egypt joins, I think this is more theater than a show of force, and I certainly don't believe that any of this is directed at Israel. If anything, it is directed at the axis of resistance.
How about the U.S. invading Latin America? I mean, isn't it pretty much all already invaded? From Venezuela, Chile, Argentina.
Colombia. Yeah, I saw a report today. They're bombing fishing boats off the coast of Ecuador, the U.S. military. So basically terrorizing fishermen off the coast of Ecuador. So in some respects, yes, it has already begun.
And whatever the United States want from Panama, they could probably get it without invading. I mean, I don't see why they would.
Same thing from Argentina. All they got to do is ask.
So Flower Power says, off topic, but do you think the Epstein files have effectively been swept under the rug? Not at reason to resist.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that question, because just 2 hours ago, I read an interesting report just out of the blue. Your timing is excellent, Flower Power, because out of the blue, that senatorial committee that is investigating the Epstein files issued a statement that they are getting frustrated with Wexler, who you may recall, this is the founder or the co-founder of Victoria's Secret, or L Brands, which was the parent company of Victoria's Secret, and he gave enormous amounts of money to Epstein. Epstein regularly stayed at one or more of his mansions. So Wexler, whom we've covered on this program, apparently he's received a subpoena pursuant to which he is supposed to provide all non-disclosure agreements to which he is a party. And I'm sorry, yes, I'm mispronouncing his name, Verena, thank you. His name's Wexner, Les Wexner. And Wexner has only produced one non-disclosure agreement, and I suspect he's signed many over the years. And so they are threatening the people on this senatorial committee to hold him in contempt. And he's also supposed to appear, I didn't know this, but he's supposed to appear for another deposition, and his lawyers are saying that he doesn't want to give testimony under oath. He wants it to be a voluntary, unsworn interrogation. And this is also something that is raising the ire of people in the Senate. So I'm at least was relieved to see that they haven't given up on this investigation, although there's lots of reason to doubt whether or not they're going to pursue it as vigorously as they should. But we will, as Rami said, we're going to continue to cover this story. We got sidelined by these momentous events in West Asia, and that we're not going to let the story go.
And I'm not going to say more than I should, although I wish I can. I mean, I would love to do so. We've been investigating over the past 2 weeks someone who's mentioned in the Epstein files. The first report that we our first investigation that we did was on Daniel Siad. That turned out to be deadly, pun not intended. And now
Because Siad was, you just explain why you said that.
because in all seriousness, he's dead. But also he was very shady, suspicious, definitely involved with Mossad. You could watch our report on that we published. And
Rami has nothing to do with his death. Let's be very clear about that. We just want to, just in case anyone has a question about that.
No, but we're investigating someone that is, in my opinion, and Dimitri, you only read like 1/10 of what I wrote and investigated, and it's 100 times more impressive than Daniel Siad. And I mean, just every time I have a little break for 10 minutes, I do some research, I uncover something even more intense. And I'm hoping that next week we can start releasing the information that we've been finding.
Right. Okay, Rami, we've been going for about an hour 20. So unless there's another question in there you think we should answer. Thank you very much, Danny, for
there's one
that
question
contribution.
someone asked. Sorry, guys, I'm going to ask again. I have made something for you guys. Is there a means to give it to you? How to basically, Honorism wants to give you a gift, Dimitri.
Thank you very much for that. If you send me a message over Substack, and I'll get to the information you're asking for, Honorism. Thank you very much. I was just saying, Danny Chado, much appreciated your generosity. I saw some other people made a donation. Thank you very much for supporting Reason to Resist it. All these contributions help us to expand our on-the-ground coverage. Okay, folks, we'll be signing off today. Please stay safe out there, and we'll be back to you tomorrow with another report on the newest developments in the war on Iran.
See you, folks.